Hey there, so today I want to spotlight cronyism on display, and I'm going to utilize a person's own words within this. We see people talk about this and make inferences to it on occasion, but in Chelsea Cain's own words, she's going to talk about this subject. She's going to talk about how she got her first book, and then through a series of events, we're going to watch not only one thing get canceled, but two. Now, this showcases exactly what happens when ideologues bring in other ideologues, when we have people with zero experience coming in, and we basically see this idea that somebody can come in because a friend says so, and well, that's going to have a positive impact. Now, after one series is canceled from that, but after another is canceled, wow. After a long hiatus off of social media, she posted the following here. You know what I just realized? I think that Marvel thought I would be quiet about this whole killed Vision comic thing because I was quiet after Mockingbird was canceled. Let me clarify. I was quiet then because I was scared. Not of you, Marvel, of the internet. I'm not scared of either of you anymore. Now, there were so many that's stunning, that's brave statements. And then after she makes the next statement about now, after posting that, I'm suddenly very scared of Marvel and the internet, she gets all the, oh, we support you there. You're a great person, Chelsea. You know, the bravos. Now, within this and the following tweets that we see, she actually reposts an article that we'll look over, and she tells you within this that she's going to there's going to be media on this Vision thing. She'll be retweeting the hell out of it, and do not think for a second I'm done with this. You know, this person, Ministry Trouble, I give you my sword. So she's going to be covering that. Now, if you think, what the heck is going on? And what are you talking about? Cronyism? Well, let's look back at Mockingbird, where all of this stuff started. Now, you can see the cover here. Ask me about my feminist agenda. Now, this thing was supposedly not pre-planned. You know, it was something that just came up because artist vision, you know, it's something that pretty much adheres to the principles of the character, but it wasn't Chelsea Cain that brought that up. She wasn't trying to send a message within this. Now, note the date on this article, October 26, 2016. Very important for you to note within this. Now, she talks about blowback and on that she got because of that. She talks about how, you know, there's a vocal segment of the comic book readership that is dominated by sexist jerks with Twitter accounts. Twitter is highly flawed. It's a platform that nurtures a culture of bullying. And then she goes into all of these threats that never quite materialized. You know, people that said that, you know, there were rape threats and other things and on. They never quite again materialized, but apparently were supposedly there. You know, because of course, listen and believe that. In the comic book industry, they did. You know, because we're talking about only people that work with her, of course. We're not talking about people that are friends and on, you know, like Axel Alonso and Gail Simone and Brian Michael Bendis. Oh, wait, Chelsea Cain is my friend. And what's more, I mean, utilizing her own words, when we start looking through this, they're actually very good friends. So this is chelseacain.com. This is her blog. Her words on here. Now, if you look at the top of this, you'll notice certain people tagged in there. You know, we have the author of Fight Club within this. She talks about going and partying with that person, Kelly Sue DeConnick. We have Matt Fraction, and we have Brian Michael Bendis. Now, within this, it's very interesting because CBR News talked to her, and they asked her about the character within Mockingbird. They said, you know, what aspects of that character are you interested in exploring? She said, you know, I felt I could give her a point of view, you know, because despite her questionable taste in men and the fact that her reality often turns out to be a lie, she is obviously cool and smart and badass, and she knows how to deliver a good zinger at her ex-husband's expense. Basically, I have a feminist agenda. Now, you know, I keep queuing back somewhere, and I'm not quite sure where, but I think I've heard that before. I've heard something about feminist agendas, but I can't quite place my mouse cursor on it. Well, never mind. I think I'll give up on that. Now, the next part of this is very, very telling because it showcases how cronyism impacts industry. She talks about how she has no shame here. This is important. It has gotten me far. I've got this gig through sheer gall. Tell me more. I emailed Brian Michael Bendis and was like, I want to write Mockingbird. And he wrote me back and was like, yeah, we need to talk. So she has Brian Michael Bendis' email. What's more, he came over and sat me down and explained very patiently and gently that Marvel doesn't generally hire people with zero experience. And I was like, I want to write Mockingbird. And he sighed and put his head in his hands. But in a strange fit of kismet, or as my husband calls it, the law of everything working out for Chelsea. I wonder how that worked out, by the way, with Vision. But anyhow, continuing. Marvel happened to be planning this Mockingbird one-off, and I was there jumping up and down with my hand in the air. So then she goes through, and she talks about more of that, and then after an ad, she starts talking about different things like a party. She starts talking about how the whole Portland scene is set up. You can see it right here. So she starts out with Mark and I hang out a lot of comics people. They're like pigeons here in Portland. If you stop and pay attention to one, the next thing you know, there are 35 of them standing around with their heads cocked. If the first pigeon likes you, you're in. So they talk about cronyism within that. And then further on, they start talking about partying with people. So Mark and I, we had a dinner party with the singular goal of convincing Chuck to write a comic. Mark was the one that came up with the idea. It was just an aside. You know who should write a comic? Chuck. Then they talk about the other people there. You know, it's Bendis, his wife there, so they're family friends, Kelly Sue, and Matt Fraction and on. So you can look at this and you can see a display of cronyism and how it got people in the door. But of course, that's not the case, right? Because it's the world outside my window. This is the reflection of a greater world out there. It, of course, can't be so niche and small, can it? Oh, yeah, it can. This is the thing that a lot of people have talked about within this. This is a bunch of ideologues letting in other people that, of course, adhere to the same principles they do. They either bring in people that have specific ideas from the outside that they do, or they bring in people they already know. This kind of cronyism, too, well, it hurts industry because, hey, you see Mockingbird get canceled, and then we have Vision that also gets canceled, too. So we saw this being shared there. You know, Chelsea Cain is just as shocked as you about the abrupt cancellation of her new Marvel comic, The Vision. So this week ended on a bad note for fans of Chelsea Cain's writing. 2 years after the novelist's first Marvel superhero comic, Mockingbird, was canceled after just 8 issues and inspired a toxic social media harassment campaign against her, Cain was all set to finally publish her second Marvel comic, The Vision, later this year. First announced in July at San Diego Comic-Con, The Vision was set to be a 6-issue miniseries focused on the titular synthetic superhero and his relationship with his young robot daughter Viv. But on Thursday morning, Marvel's weekly mailer to Diamond Comic distributors announced that the series had been canceled and would not be resolicited. That news was soon broken wide on Bleeding Cool Report. Cain and her co-writer husband Mark had worked on 4 issues, none of which will now see the light of day. Reportedly, Marvel editorial for the Vision and Viv characters had changed to the degree that the series plan was no longer tenable. There had been a lot of editorial changeover at Marvel during the last year, but sources tell EW that this decision was not made lightly. For her part, Cain tells EW she found out the news on Tuesday and is still just as shocked as anyone. I was offered the gig in July of 2016, Cain says. At that point, Mockingbird had been stealth canceled after issue 3, but I had been asked not to make that public until the 8th issue had been published. So obviously that was already a failure after 3 issues. You know, there was already a problem. But continuing, they were allowing us to finish out the arc. Now you notice whose name comes up in this. You know, again, I talk about cronyism. I talk about small groups of people, the idea of community versus industry. And of course, these people are going to come out and they're going to confront the wrong thinker, aka people who think that maybe a person person that had to be canceled after 3 issues. Maybe they shouldn't be continuing comics in other runs, but then again, what do we know? So continuing, Tom King's marvelous run on Vision was still coming out, but he had left Marvel and signed an exclusive deal with DC, so Marvel obviously knew it was wrapping up. I was asked to tell a Vision story that focused on Vision and his teenage daughter, who had just been introduced into Marvel Universe. Now there is a little bit more cronyism coming up here. I pitched the idea of my husband co-writing it with me. Then look at this book here. So continuing, Mark is a writer, and we once co-wrote an illustrated book called Does This Cape Make Me Look Fat? Pop psychology for superheroes. My God, that sounds awful. Also, we have a teenage daughter, so Mark brings a unique authority to the subject matter. Really, so because he has a teenage daughter, that is going to make him a unique authority. Basically, you have an encapsulated group of people that are going to be working on this, people that are within the same household. So, of course, when you look at that, what kind of checks are you going to have? Who is going to balance this thing out? But continuing, Kane continues. So by the time Mockingbird ended publicly and Twitter exploded, Mark and I were already working on the Vision. We spent months outlining and negotiating contracts and researching. We submitted an outline for the whole first arc. By September of 2017, 1 year ago, we submitted the script for number 1. By December, we had an artist attached and editorial feedback. We're off to the races. We had been working solidly for the last 6 months. The first issues are inked. The first issue is colored. They all have amazing cover art. The series was announced in July and officially solicited about a month ago. They put it in the previews. They advertised it. Why go through all of this just to pull the plug? Marvel had no official comment when contacted by EW. So you can see that there. Kane says she and her husband were drawing inspiration from their own relationships with their daughter for the Vision, describing the series as a father-daughter story about the efforts of an emotionally stunted man to reach out and connect with his woke teenage daughter. Does that not sound awful in so many ways? No action. You're going to have a woke teenage daughter. You have that from the person that tells you about their feminist agenda. Does this not sound like a train wreck? Really, how is that going off? If that isn't a metaphor for the comic book business, I don't know what is. So furthermore, this is how people look at the business here. They look at a father or a father figure talking to children out there. Can you imagine who the child's supposed to be out there? I'm sure that they consider us. We're probably the children. But continuing here, for those who didn't read King's 2016 Vision miniseries, it featured the Avengers resident robot design an entire android family to live in the DC suburbs with them. Wife Virginia, son Vin, daughter Viv, and dog Sparky. By the end of that story, only Viv and the original Vision were left. The others have been destroyed through various means, though Sparky was rebuilt. Viv had since gone on to appear in other Marvel comics like The Champions, but this would be Marvel's first Vision-focused comic since King, and both of them had finished their series. In Kane's view, the sudden cancellation reflects the strange dynamics of the comic industry, where almost all creators are freelancers with limited powers. In a tweet after the cancellation became public, Kane wrote to her followers, "I want you to know that I'm being truthful and transparent because most of the comic book freelancers can't be. I am loud for all of them. Of course, I'm loud, I'm proud, I'm going to come out, and I'm going to talk about all of this stuff there." And when she talks about this stuff too, exactly what has she got to say? Well, let's check that out. The comic book industry is made up of freelancers. I think a lot of readers don't understand the extent of that reality. Certainly, any comic book by Marvel or DC, those are the work of freelancers, colorists, inkers, pencilers, letterers, cover artists, and writers. The editors work for the company. The freelancers don't. Maybe some of them have exclusive contracts, which means they get a little bit more money per page, but absolutely no benefits or protections, plus they don't get to work for anyone else. But basically, every comic you pick up has been made by someone without health insurance. But these freelancers are still expected to behave behave like employees, really, because, I always hear about how they're freelancers and how, well, they don't actually reflect company. So when you're talking about this stuff, wouldn't it be in the best interest of a person that's working as a freelancer to go out and appeal to everyone out there that is buying comic books? That way, when those people put out something on their own, those things that put money into their pocket every time, they would build more and more audience. Wouldn't that make more sense? But continuing here, they are told what they say and when to say it. I've said it before, but this whole industry is a class action lawsuit waiting to happen. It's astonishing. So you see the kind of people that talk about this industry too. Oh, this is a lawsuit just waiting to happen there. This left Kane with few institutional protections when she was targeted by the anti-Mockingbird harassment campaign. She says, Marvel put me through a lot with Mockingbird. I faced that with zero institutional protections. All along, I tried to be part of positive change from inside, silent change, because I literally was told I couldn't breathe a word of the project. Hold tight, they kept saying. Hold tight, it breaks my heart, because I think it sends a terrible message. And I love this brand. I love these guys, and I love comics, but of course, class action lawsuit, not. So, when you look at the wording here, you hear about this kind of stuff. What she's saying here, they're describing consumers as the enemy. This is what you're hearing throughout all of this. Hold tight. Don't say anything about stuff. But continuing here, Kane is complimentary toward the people she worked with. She describes the Vision editor, Will Moss, as one of the most lovable, personable, talented people in comics. I've literally never had a negative interaction with anyone at Marvel. They've given me nothing but positive feedback. The most shocking part of it is that the people who work in it, who support these institutional norms, they're the best people you ever want to meet. They love comics, and the freelancers, they're held hostage by the work. When Marvel asks you to let something go, to toe the line, the implication is clear. DC and Marvel dominate the industry. Freelancers don't want to make enemies of institutions because freelancers depend on the next job that comes along. The limitations of freelance labor aren't the only obstacle for a comic like The Vision. Female creators are still in short supply at Marvel and DC, where superhero comics are still dominated by men and few stories are told from a female perspective. Kane actually has another comic coming out later this month, Maneaters, that tackles this issue head on. Doesn't that sound like fun too? Continuing here. Illustrated by Kane's old Mockingbird collaborators, Maneaters doesn't deal with superheroes at all, but rather a world where teenage girl menstruation starts turning them into murderous monsters. Man, that sounds like a fun comic. As Kane told EW back in July, it was popularly born out of Kane's frustration at the lack of comics that could appeal to female fans like her daughter. So menstruation turns you into a monster, and that is supposed to appeal to a daughter. I swear, when you look at this kind of stuff and you look at exactly what's said within it, of course, it becomes this issue. It's about everyone except the effort that was put into it. Everyone except Chelsea Kane. Everyone except, the way that she came in. If we're going to place blame here, we blame the institution, yes. We can then blame the institution for practices, but these practices go well beyond things like not giving health care. We're talking about practices that allow for things like cronyism to go on display, allow someone back in, and this person now that they don't feel supported, they're going to go out and they're going to lambast said industry. But continuing and finishing this article, my experience, it doesn't belong to me. It happens again and again and again. I'm just one of the few people crazy enough to say it out loud. I have a 13-year-old daughter who loves comics. I used to be a 13-year-old girl who loves comics. I see my daughter. I see her experience. I see you. We see you. Yeah, you see yourself until somebody talks about, not wanting a specific thing within comic books. Then, of course, they want to see you out the door. My final thoughts on this kind of stuff, when you look at it, it showcases glaring issues on display. It showcases what kind of binds the industry gets itself in for practices like you saw there, and the way that they spun them and on, and the way that they spin blowback, because blowback to a comic that had already been canceled for 5 issues, well, that was the consumer's fault. The consumers, when they said, hey, I don't want this cover, and these people already knew it was canceled. They already knew that. They already had decided, again, if you went back into the article where she's talking about this, they'd already decided to put the agenda that they had already decided to put that to paper because they knew that it had been canceled. When they got blowback to that, of course, it's the consumer's fault. Then, of course, we see something else canceled. That showcases all of the problems with industry, all of the problems with sexism, everything but the cronyism on display that we saw, the storytelling, the lack of connection because there would have been no action and it would have been a story about a woke daughter and a father and so on. I mean, really think about this stuff. Like I said, this is a cautionary tale for Marvel, but it also showcases the practices within this thing that sees itself more like a community and less like an industry. But you tell me what you think. Also, if you like this kind of content, make sure to support channels like this and other ones. This is Wrong Think Variety, and of course, this is not incentivized. There are links within the description. There is a Patreon to help continue this kind of stuff because, again, de-incentivized. There's also a PayPal link and on. I will be utilizing that this month to basically replace some machinery that Lightning did not like, and I appreciate that. We just cracked 9,000. We're rolling toward 10K. That is you all. I appreciate everyone that is subscribed and, like, subscribe, and all of that. Make sure you catch live streams. Like I said, support creators that you enjoy, but also give me your thoughts on this stuff. Thank you.